I want to ask you for a favor. The first favor of today. Remember the last time you've been to a museum and you liked it. Can you remember? Some of you might have been there for the art. There's this very special, intimate, almost celestial moment where you sit there and there's a piece of art and you talk to it and it talks back and it enriches your life and you leave the place different from how you came. There's many other reasons why people love museums. Community. One of the main reasons people go to museums is because they want to share this passion for the art with others. So, retired people who become members of the friendship party of a museum, they belong to this group. Young people who go there to have fun. Community is a very pivotal part in why people come to museums. Love. Many of you, I bet, some of you don't accept it, but many of you have been to museums with their loved ones, with people they wanted to impress, people they wanted to impress by being smart. Well, this is Caravaggio or so. It's very important. It's a very flirtatious place, museums, I tell you. Or it's Aunt Susie from Paris. She comes to Vienna and you want to show her your town. So where do you go? Of course, you go to the museum. Well, this Aunt Susie is my museum. A very basic reason why people come to museums is the weather. Many curators, many art historians, and many museum directors are not very happy about this fact. But when it's very cold, very rainy, or very hot, museums are always full. This was a Facebook post we did this summer. We just wanted to show people how the temperature levels in Vienna were. Outside, it was 36, 37, 38. And in the Kunstkammer, it's always 20.5, always. So this is a reason why people come to museums. 20 to 25% of the visitors in all museums all around the globe are children. So people come to museums with their kids. I took my 2 nephews and my niece, 3, 6, 9, to the Kunsthistorisches Museum just 3 weeks ago. And we took a bag of plastic animals. You know, everybody has this bag of plastic animals. And we went through the house looking for animals and then tried to take photos of our animals in front of the big ones. They loved it, and the 6th one shared it on her Facebook page. So children, if you do it correctly, love museums. Children love to paint. Children are the main visitor group that accepts this moment that museums are great for creativity. All artists go to museums because, of course, they want to study art. Many, many people who just want to be creative, who want to be enlightened by the creativity of hundreds or thousands of years, of course, they come to museums. Parents come to museums in order to put their children to rest. This is a photo of the 1870s. The British were very early in opening up museums and very early in making photographs. Many museums are dark places because the objects don't like the light so much. If you spend about 30 minutes in a very dark place, and you will notice this soon, your body tells you, well, fall asleep. So it happens again and again that we find children lying somewhere sleeping in museums, and their parents enjoy the free time. Some of you just might like crazy dogs. Museums are full of crazy animals of the past 5,000 years. So there's many reasons to come. Why do I talk about museums in the first place? museums are very old institutions. Older, many of them, than hospitals, prisons, parliaments, sometimes even universities, in many cases schools. They are very old. So if we talk about the future, of course we have to look back. So this is why we talk about museums. The second reason is an egotistical reason. This is where I work. And of course it's an incredible privilege to work there. I work literally below Rembrandt, so one of the late Rembrandt self-portraits. This is it. One of the late Rembrandt self-portraits. This is where I work. Rembrandt is above me. There's Rubens, there's Velázquez, and there is, no, Velázquez is somewhere else, and there is Vermeer. So I'm incredibly privileged to work there. And actually, and this is really a coincidence, to the date, today, October 17, 1891, so 124 years ago, this place opened. So we are very engaged with thinking about the past of museums, the present of museums, and the future of museums. We're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary next year, and this is why we're very much into this question of what the role of museums could be and can be in society. The moment this museum opened, of course, was a moment where the world was totally different. 1891. This is a drawing of the opening ceremony, Emperor Franz Joseph being there, kind of opening his collection for the masses. This was not the first museum in the world. Museums started about 200 years earlier, in the late 17th century. And then in the 18th century, in the Age of Enlightenment, museums were opened as a matter of educating the people. It was a democratic endeavor. It had to do with people who said, well, this is this incredible art, this is this incredible knowledge of the past, I want to give this to everybody. Everybody should have access to these places. So, museums like the British Museum opened in 1753, so Enlightenment on the way. The Louvre opened in 1793. Of course, this was a revolutionary movement. It was really about, come on, here's this incredible treasure, come on in and share it with us. Time changed, so some of the other big museums that opened in the coming decades had somehow different perspectives. It was maybe again more, I have the power and I give you the opportunity to look at my pieces a bit. So this is the Altes Museum in Berlin, 1830. Or we talk about the Metropolitan Museum in New York, 1870. And the Metropolitan Museum is a very interesting place. First of all, it has about 10 million visitors a year. 10 million visitors go to this place, go to an old master museum. Then, it is the biggest museum in the world, and what they do, everybody looks at what they do. And of course, it is the pivotal place for philanthropy. The Americans invented philanthropy, so it's not only about power, exerting some kind of I know and I tell you what I know and then you know too. It's also this philanthropic aspect of I have too much money on my account, so I want to give this to more people to experience these incredible, precious moments. What has changed? 2015, we're obviously in the future. What has changed since then? Well, the people who opened these museums up back then, they disappeared. The whole political system, the whole societal structure changed a lot. Globalization is a very important element in terms of the real thing. If globalization also means that everything is basically available everywhere, the real Bruegel is only available at this place. The real, whatever, Gauguin, Picasso, you name it, is available in one place. So it's kind of anti-globalization. Of course, tourism changed. Migration changed. We have a UN now, by the way. And the UN in 1984 said, everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. So this is in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. It's obviously important. These guys thought it's important to have access to the art, to live a free life. Migration, tourism, a lot of things have changed over the past decades since these big museums have opened. The number of visitors, of course, has changed dramatically. The number of museums that have opened has changed dramatically. 90% of the museums in Europe were opened after the Second World War. So it's a big trend. This is why we talk about it. This is why we think that museums are very elementary parts of our society. So, this is the past. This is how we came here. Now, what's the big deal? What's the challenge? What are the questions that we ask ourselves, the questions that we try to answer today? The first thing is access. Who gets into a museum? In many countries, museums are free. In even more countries, museums are, well, not necessarily very expensive, but access to museums costs between 15 and 25 euro. So it's not for free. It's a small investment. Maybe compared to a movie theater with small popcorn and small Coca-Cola, it's not so much, but it's a small investment. What about people who sit in Linz, going onto the website of the Metropolitan Museum in New York and watching a piece of art there? Well, they're also visitors. They also want to enjoy the art. Actually, this is an element, a small part of a very famous painting at the Kunsthistorisches Museum called the Tower of Babel by Peter Bruegel the Elder. It's about this size, and if you stand in front of it, you feel something. This is an incredible painting. It's an incredibly old painting. It's almost 400 years old. It has been very, very famous ever since, but still, if you go on Google Art Project, you see things that you don't see when you stand there in real life. So what technology does, and the possibility to sit in front of your laptop computer anywhere, you can devour this piece maybe even better than if you stand in front of it. This is a weird thing to say, authentic versus not authentic, but this is something that will change the museum world dramatically in the future. Where people are when they access museums, how expositions, how exhibitions are put together. This is something where technology, but also the ability of people to access things from everywhere in the world will change what we do. Another thing that changes is people's expectations. So as I said before, some people come for the love, some people come for the food, some people come for the animals. 45% of the people who go to Tate Modern come there for social reasons. This is Chris Dirken, the then director of Tate Modern, one of the most successful places in Europe. And they've actually been a bit depressed when they found out that 45% of their audience comes for social causes. Because they put up all this incredible art and they do a lot of work in curatorial, etc. stuff, and still people come to hang out with friends. Well, this is a fact, so let's deal with it. Let's create places that are open. Let's create places that invite people to come and share a good time with their friends. A massive thing is cultural, historical, language, religious background. If we compare the world of today with the world 50 years ago, things have changed. Who would know why this guy up there, who's, by the way, Maximilian I, emperor of a big empire, why is he carrying a pomegranate? He probably never was in Israel or in the Middle East to collect these. What does this mean? It's very hard to find people who know what this means. The lady on the top, I find this a very, very moving picture. Actually, she's dying or she's already dead. And some of you might not have guessed it's Cleopatra. Why didn't you guess that it's Cleopatra? Because you thought Cleopatra had black hair, probably. Well, at that time, they painted Cleopatra blonde because they thought it fitted her better. Who would know that? Who would not feel intimidated by a lady with a head and a sword? And what is this Judith Holofernes thing? Is this common knowledge? No, it's not. So what museums have to do now, what galleries have to do now, they have to be much smarter and much easier in helping people to understand these pictures, helping people to get access to these incredible works of art that were in the back of people's minds many, many centuries, but this changed. The God of gods robbing a woman by turning into a cloud. Okay, but you should know what this is in order to understand the painting. Or maybe you don't have to, but it might be interesting. All this religious iconography that you find in museums is hard to explain to many, many, many people who come to museums. If we talk about 50% tourism, if we talk about 50% from totally other cultural spheres, we need some time, and they need to give us some time to explain them who is torturing who. And why, in the end, does this poor boy have to carry a dress? Well, I can tell you later. When the briefing for the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna was written, which was about 1870, in the brief they said, when you come in, you should feel small and insignificant. The architects were very, very good, so it still works today. And it's actually a lot of barriers that people have to overcome. It's physical barriers. It's hard to get in there when you can't walk very well. It's hard to get in there when you're in a wheelchair. It's hard to access the art when you don't see very well, when you don't hear very well some other arts. So all museums, all curators everywhere are working very, very hard to reduce the barriers, to give people an easier access into these museums. Barriers are not only physical barriers, but only the barrier of, am I smart enough? If I go in with Aunt Susie from Paris and she asks me, oh, what do you think about Renaissance and so? Would I feel embarrassed if I don't know so much about Renaissance? Probably. So this is another big challenge that museums face today, is reducing the barriers, making it easier for people. One last thing I want to come to is technology. This is probably the first selfie in the world, done by a guy called Parmigianino in 1523. He did this to be invited to work for the Pope. If you were Mona Lisa, this is how the world looked like. You think this is what people look like? Because everybody stands there in front of the Mona Lisa like this, doing a selfie. So another big challenge. What we want to achieve with this, in the end, we want people to feel the love that we have for these objects. We want people to feel connected to the art, feel connected to each other, and when they enter the place and they compare this to the moment when they exit a museum, they should feel enriched by whatever it is. Being smarter, being more in love, having had a good time, just leaving the place enriched. And I thank you very much for your attention.